to the next point. We should ensure
Once
whatever we
capital
say is
Q.
clear.
That means work is being done. We can see that it is in opposite direction. It is clear.
Good day, learners, listeners, and viewers at home. I am Blessing Ayuba Samson, your financial accounting teacher. I'm here today to present a topic, Principles and Practice of Double Entry. I am here to present a topic, Principle and Practice of Double Entry. The outline of today's lesson is 1. State and explain the rule of double entry. State the features and uses of a ledger, a specimen of a ledger. Then we will take examples. Accounting involves the act of raising accounting records through the source documents and using the principle of double entry. Every business transactions and events need to be recorded in the accounting book with the aim to prepare financial reports at the end of the day. We have two elements that involve in accounting records. Two elements involved in raising accounting records. One of the elements is the accounting books. Number 2, application of the rule of double entry. 1, accounting books. Secondly, application of the rule of double entry. Let's take the accounting books. These are books or records in which all business transactions are kept. Accounting books for every businessman. You must have accounting books where all transactions of buying and selling, where you keep your records. And this book can be divided into two, which is subsidiary books and the ledger. Accounting books are divided into two, the subsidiary books and the ledger. The subsidiary books are referred to as book of prime entry or first entry. Well, why we say books of prime entry, they are the books that at the beginning, when you go to a shop to buy maybe an electronic, you have to pay the cashier and you'll be issued a receipt or an invoice. That invoice is what is the first transaction between the buyer and the seller. And the seller has to keep a proper book of accounts where at the end of the day to have a proper accounting record. Examples of such books are sales day book. Examples of such books are, number 1, sales day book. We have purchase day book. We have the cash book. We have sales return book. And we have purchases return book. And we also have the journal. We have 5 books. The sales day book, the purchase day book, the cash book, the sales return book, purchases return book, and we also have the journal. Now the ledger, definition of the ledger. What is a ledger? The ledger is a principal book of accounts where the source document, the other one we said was the subsidiary. The subsidiary comes before the ledger. We have the subsidiary where all the receipts, the invoice are being kept to be transferred into the ledger. That is why we say the ledger is the principal book of accounts in which all business transactions are recorded therein using the rule of double entry. And every transaction is gotten from the source document, which is in the subsidiary book. Now we have the features of a ledger. When you see features, another word for features is characteristics. What are the things that you see? And you know that this is a ledger. 1, a ledger is divided into 2 sides. A ledger is divided into 2 sides. namely the right-hand side and the left-hand side. I'll take that again. The ledger is divided into two sides. We have the right-hand side and we have the left-hand side. Then number 2 features. The right-hand side is called the credit side. The right-hand side of a ledger is called the credit side of the ledger, while the left-hand side is called the debit side of the ledger. Then we have number 3. A ledger has columns. A ledger has columns to record dates, particulars, folio, and amount. A ledger has columns to record dates, particulars, folio, and amount. And this recording is on each side of the ledger. Remember, I said the ledger has 2 sides. Then the ledger has 8 columns. Each ledger must have the title written on top of it. Every ledger must have the title written on top of it. I'm going to give you a specimen of a ledger. This is a specimen of a ledger. You can see that we have 2 sides. We have the debit side and we have the credit side. And it is in a T form. In the classroom setting, we give you the ledger in a T form, where we have the debit and the credit. And the credit side is our right-hand side, while the debit side is our left-hand side. You can see the date, the particulars, folio, amount. On the other side, there is date, particulars, folio, and amount. And what is the purpose of the folio? The folio is where we trace transactions. The folio in a ledger is where we trace transactions in numbers. Now, we are going into the golden rule of the double entry. In accounting, we have a golden rule of double entry. The rule of double entry, as postulated by Reverend Lucas Pasiola, says that for every business transaction, it will require 2 accounting entries. For every business transaction, it will require 2 transactions. One to be made in the credit, while the other should be made in the debit. Let me put it in this way. For every business transaction, there must be a correspondence, a debit entry and a credit entry. That is our golden rule. For every business, there must be a debit entry and a correspondent credit entry. The rule can be simplified to state that in every transaction, the following must be deduced. We'll break down this rule in the following way. A transaction must show at least 2 subjects, 2 subject matters, which are to be represented as ledgers. What are these 2 subject matters? A buyer and a seller, or we say a giver and a receiver. Number 2, of the 2 ledgers, one must show that it received goods or its value, while the other will show that it gives goods or its values. That is what we mean by correspondence, a debit entry and a credit entry, a receiving one and the giving one. Number 3, the ledger that gives out is to be credited. The ledger that gives out is to be credited. For example, when you have a business and you pay rent or you pay salaries and wages to your workers, you are giving out. So that figure has to be credited. And the other ledger will receive, and it has to be what? Debited. When income comes into your business, You are receiving, so it has to go to the debit side of the account. Example 1. Application of double entry. We have to apply double entry using this example. We have business transaction. Mr. A received goods worth 2,000 from Mr. B. The two ledgers involved in the above example are as follows. We have two ledgers involved here. We have ledger A and ledger B. Then, from the example and the content of this transaction, B gives out goods. 2,000, Mr. A received goods worth 2,000 from Mr. B. That is, Mr. B is the one that is giving out the goods, while Mr. A is the one that is receiving the goods. So, in the debit side, we have an increase, where the credit side, we have a decrease. You are taking out and you are giving. The debit is increasing while the credit side is reducing. Now, A and B with ledger account as follow. This is the solution of this example. You can see here, I'm going to show you the principle of double entry here. A's ledger account, where we have the debit side and the credit side. And our transaction is just 2,000 naira. Where B is the receiver. You can see on 1st January 1st, B's ledger, he receives 2,000 naira from A. He's receiving from A and it has to be debited. Then B's ledger account, A is the one that is giving out. So it has to be what? Credited with 2,000 naira. B ledger is the heading, while in our column, A's ledger is 2,000. Anytime we want to apply the principle of double entry, the heading, when we have A as a ledger account, you have B as a debit account. While the second one is B ledger, then you see the receiver is the giver goes to the credit side as A. That is a principle. B ledger, A, the heading is A, while inside the column we have B. When we come here, the heading is B ledger account. When we come into the column, it is A's ledger account, giving out 2,000. The second example, the following transactions are given. Number 1, Alade started business with 50,000 cash on 1st January 2008. Rent was paid for 15,000 cash on 2nd January 2008. Furniture was bought for 30,000 each on 3rd January 2008. Use the steps shown above to explain the use of double entry principle. This is the question. So, if you look at the question, Alade started with cash. And in accounting, the initial money or cash that we start businesses with is called capital. It is called what? Capital. So you will start by opening a capital account. You will start by opening a capital account, and you can see the principle of double entry here. On our credit side, capital is the heading, capital account. On our credit side, cash will be recorded as 50,000. Then when you go to the cash account, capital is on the debit side as 50,000. Then rent, you are paying out. I told you, anytime you are paying out, you have to credit the account. Rent is 15,000 because you are paying out with cash, and it will come under the cash account. On 3rd January 2008, we bought furnitures, 30,000, which is going to be on the credit side. Then we are going to open a rent account and also a furniture account. You can see that in our cash account, rent was credited. But when it comes to rent account, cash will be debited. And when it comes to furniture account, cash also will be debited. This is the principle of double entry. Let me take a summary of what has been taught. Today, we talked about the principle of double entry, where we explain the meaning of ledger and double entry. We said in every business transaction, you have to raise an accounting record. As a businessman, when you don't raise accounting records, you will not know whether you are making profits or you are making loss. So you have to raise an accounting record, a proper accounting record. And that record has to go through the source documents. Every business transactions and events need to be recorded in accounting books with the aim to prepare a financial record at the end of that business. Then, I said we have two processes of raising accounting records. And this process has to pass through two elements, which are the accounting books and the application of double entry, to make our accounts to be recorded in a proper way and our figures to be able, so that we can be able to ascertain for them. We use two methods or two elements, which are the accounting books. These are books or records in which all business transactions are recorded, or where all business transactions are being kept for further accounting inquiries. And these accounting books are divided into two. We have number one, the subsidiary books, and we also have the ledger. The subsidiary books are referred to as the book of prime entry or the first entry, where I gave an example of buying and selling transaction, where somebody comes to buy a machine, you issue a receipt or you issue an invoice. It has to be kept for accountability and be transferred into the ledger. And we gave examples of subsidiary books, where we say we have the sales day book, we have the purchases day book, we have the cash book, we have the sales return book, where we have returns by damaged goods, and where we purchase goods, and we also have returns. We have to open the sales return book, and we have the journal. A journal is where we make corrections. The ledger, it is the principal book of accounts, where all transactions from the source documents are transferred into the ledger using the double entry system. And I gave you features of a ledger, where we say the ledger is divided into two sides, where we have the credit side and we have the what? Debit side. That is the right-hand side and the left-hand side. The right-hand side is the credit side, while the left-hand side is your debit side. And the ledger also has columns to record your dates, your particulars, that is the transactions. The folio, where you trace amounts. In every journal or in every receipt or invoice, you will see that there are numbers there. And those numbers are traced when you want to make accountability. Then we have every ledger has to have a heading. Like the one we have, an example I gave you, Mr. Alade. You must give a ledger and a heading to be able to go there when there's any problem in accounting. This is the specimen of a ledger where we have the debit and the credit. I told you two sides. Here is the left-hand side, that is the debit side, and we have the right-hand side, which is the credit side. And each of the columns carry the same, which is the date, particulars, folio, and amount. I told you the golden rule of double entry. Every credit entry must have a corresponding debit entry. Every credit entry must have a corresponding debit entry. That is the rule that was postulated by Reverend Lucas. And we gave examples how these rules can be deduced. The transaction must show two subjects, the debit and the credit, which is the receiving part and the giving part. The receiving part is the debit side, while the giving part is the credit side. These are the examples, and I showed you how we used this example, apply them in the table. We have A's ledger and we also have B's ledger. A's ledger, A is the giver and B is the receiver. In this account, you can see that the heading, I told you it is a future. The heading is compulsory. This is A's ledger's account. And B, that is receiving, must come to the debit side. Then B's ledger account. B, who is the receiver, will credit A, who is the giver. And with this, I have come to the end of this lesson. I'm giving you 4 assignments to take back home. Number 1 of the assignment is the right-hand side of a ledger is called what? I'll repeat the question again. The right-hand side of the ledger is called what? Number 2, the left-hand side of the ledger is called what? Number 3, explain the rule of double entry. Explain the rule of double entry. Then list 4 futures. It was stated in the topic, so I want you to list them out. 4 futures of a ledger. I remain Blessing Ayubo Samson. When you are done with my assignment, you can send it to my number or through my WhatsApp number, which is 081-8269-2515. I repeat the number again. 081-8269-2515. Stay home, stay safe, and keep learning. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.